So, the Nocardia bacteria, they are gram-positive. They are filamentous branching rods. So think about the branching tree from the actinomyces Israelis sketchy image in the painting, and that is shown over here. And that helps you to remember that this bacteria is a filamentous branching rod. It's also kind of represented over here in this staining, this acid-fast staining. But anyways, the bacteria is also aerobic. So think about the air bellow under the painting. And the air bellow, it's supposed to signify that the bacteria is aerobic. And it is partially acid-fast, so some areas of smear will be blue and some red, as shown over here. And this is because the carbofusion stain that is used for acid-fast staining is taken up if the cell wall has this thing called the mycolic acid. And the mycolic acid is a long-chain fatty acid with two tails. So, to remember this, think about the main cowboy drawing a gun fast to show or represent acid fast. And then he's wearing a shawl and chaps that have tassels with two long chains. And that is represented by this cowboy over here. So this is the main cowboy. And he's wearing a shawl and chaps that have tassels. That is supposed to represent the two long fatty acid chains with the two tails. And then that is supposed to represent the situations where the cell wall have mycolic acid, which again is a long chain fatty acid with two tails. And then, most importantly, this bacteria is catalase positive and urease positive. To remember that this bacteria is catalase positive, think about the bartender holding a cat, as shown over here. And to remember that it is urease positive, just picture this ammonia spray bottle on the counter, because ammonia is one of the substances or the byproducts of the breakdown of urea through the urease enzyme. So again, remember that the important features are that this bacteria is gram-positive, filamentous branching rod, it is aerobic, it is partially acid-fast, so some areas of smear will be blue and some red. It is catalase positive and urease positive. And remember that carbofusion staining is used. And that some of these bacteria can have mycolic acid in the cell walls. So with that being said, the main reservoirs for this bacteria include the soil and the dust. So think about the cactus pods that are leaking the soil. So here's a cactus pod. It is leaking some soil. Same thing over here at the bottom. And that is supposed to remind you that this bacteria can be found in the soils and in the dust. And then for transmission, the transmission typically occurs through airborne or traumatic transplantation means. And then for pathogenesis, there are no toxins or virulence factors that are known. But for anyone who is immunosuppressed or who have cancer, they can be predisposed to pulmonary infection by the Nocardia bacteria. To remember this, think about the second cowboy holding the immunocompromised cane. So you can see the second cowboy. He is holding the immunocompromised cane. And notice how this cowboy is about to cough. And that's supposed to symbolize how people who are immunosuppressed or have cancer can be predisposed to some pulmonary infection. So now let's talk about some diseases. So nocardiosis is a typical disease for this bacteria. second cowboy. He is obviously about to cough, and then there's a bullet that is hitting his badge on his chest over here, presumably by this first guy who was supposed to separate, or by this first cowboy who was supposed to represent this Nocardia bacteria. We'll just call him the Nocardia cowboy. But anyways, so those are the important characteristics of nocardiosis. And in addition, this disease may spread hematogenously to the brain, thus creating brain abscesses of multiple foci or foci. And this time, just imagine the second bullet penetrating the cowboy's hat to symbolize this hematogenous spread to the brain and the presence of brain abscesses. So, here is the second cowboy's cowboy hat, and look at that bullet penetrating through it. So that's supposed to help you to remember this brain pathology. And then finally, the nocardia can also cause cutaneous or subcutaneous nocardiosis. So this starts with traumatic implantation, and it presents with symptoms of cellulitis and swelling. It can also lead to drainage or draining subcutaneous abscesses with granules and mycetoma. So to remember the symptoms of cellulitis and swelling, think about the second cowboy that is wearing, or who is wearing, a cow print that has spots with red borders. So here's the second cowboy. He's obviously wearing that cowboy or that cow print. And there should be some spots with red borders nearby. And those are supposed to help you to remember the symptoms of cellulitis and swelling that arises from traumatic implantation. And those are the key characteristics of the cutaneous or subcutaneous nocardiosis. And don't forget about the draining subcutaneous abscesses with granules and mycetoma. So for diagnosis, you would utilize the sputum culture or pus from the cutaneous lesion, depending on the disease involved that we talked about earlier. And then for treatment, you should utilize high-dose sulfonamides or trimethoprim /sulfamethoxazole or TMP-SMX. To remember that sulfonamides should be used to treat this bacteria. Just think about the rotten eggs on the counter. That is supposed to symbolize the foul sulfur smell. So yeah, these are the important principles associated with the Nocardia. And remember that the species for Nocardia genus includes the asteroids.